Salut French students! I hope you are ready and eager for another weekend. This is going to be video 6 of Chapitre 2. And in this particular video, we're going to be looking at just 2 short slides. This first one is about le pronom on. So this is definitely a very nasal vowel sound. So this on combination, we see it in other words, but by itself as a pronoun, it's pronounced o. So the sound of the vowel is like o, but you're sending all that air and all those vibrations through your nose. So it's kind of like having a cold. Le pronom on. Okay, so this pronoun we basically use, or it's used in French, to refer to they. It can refer to one, it can refer to people, it can actually even refer to we in like conversational everyday language. So if we look at the sentences that we see here, à Paris, on parle français. So it just means that in Paris, in general, people speak French. Okay, so rather than saying les personnes parlent français, the people speak French, or les gens parlent français, again, the people speak French, a more casual, informal way of saying that is on parle français. Or you could even say in a conversation. I've had people say it to me before. On parle français or on parle anglais, which just means, do you want to speak English together or you want to speak French? Like, why don't we just switch to that other language because it's easier or more convenient? So it's just an easy way of expressing that idea rather than using more words to do it. Another expression that sometimes people, and I'll just minimize this here for a moment and I'll type it here on the slide, and I'll just put it all the way down here at the bottom, and I'm going to put it in red so it's easy to notice. All right, and then I'll pop it back open so that you can see it there. Okay, so another expression sometimes people will use very often in everyday conversational language is on y va. And that basically means let's go. So that's a really common use of the pronoun on. And it basically just means like on y va. Like va means to go, y means there. So it's kind of like let's go there or let's go. So you might hear that a lot if you ever get to visit France or another French-speaking country someday. Okay. All right, so with on, as it shows us here, we use the same form of a verb that you would use for il or elle. So on parle, il parle, elle parle. They're all the same form. So when you're conjugating verbs, it's just like we saw in the previous video, the il or elle form in the singular, it's going to be the same for on. Okay. So a couple of other example sentences that we see down here. Mes amis et moi, on aime sortir. And notice the liaison between the n and on, and then the verb that comes after it, beginning with a vowel sound. So even though you're saying mes amis et moi, which would be like us, you're still using on aime. It's just another way to say it. You could say nous aimons sortir. That would be possible. But you could really say it either way. And it's probably a little more casual and informal to just use on in this case. Okay, so you've got a few different uses of the pronoun on. And it's really, in some, just referring to like a general group of people, us, or even one individual person. All right, moving on. Oops. All right, so another thing that I mentioned to you, I believe it was in the Wednesday video this week, is about where we put adverbs in a sentence in English versus where you would put them in French. Adverbs, just to review, in case you haven't heard some of these grammatical terms for a while, an adverb is just a word that describes a verb, which is an action, so how you do something. It's also a word that describes an adjective, so a describing word, like it basically just lends more emphasis to that description. So if we look at some of the example sentences, I think that will help us clarify that a little bit. Some of the common adverbs we'll see in French are bien, souvent, rarement, and beaucoup. So bien just tells like how well you do something. Souvent is how often you do something. Rarement is how frequently you do something. And beaucoup is how much. Okay, so they're just words that describe basically your actions, how you are doing those actions. Okay, so in English, if you look at the English sentences and you'll see where we put adverbs. So Thomas often watches TV. If I take out that adverb, I can just say Thomas watches TV. Now, Thomas is the subject, watches is the verb, TV is the object. And often I just stick it right before the verb to show how frequently I do that thing. How often do I watch something? In English, we can actually move this word all over the place. Not everywhere, but there are certain places where we can move it. So I can say, often Thomas watches TV, or Thomas watches TV often. But I cannot put it after watches because it's not going to sound right to our English-speaking ears. I can't say Thomas watches often TV. It sounds a little bit unnatural, right? But if you look at the French sentence, that's exactly what's happening there. So if I were to translate this word by word, it's Thomas watches often the TV. And so the one word order we do not use in English is used in French. So maybe that's a good way to remember where to put your adverbs. So Thomas regarde souvent la télé. You wouldn't say Thomas souvent regarde la télé. That would sound a little bit unusual to the French speaker's ears, I imagine. And the same thing with the second sentence. Sometimes I play tennis well. Okay, sometimes is in the same place as it is in English at the beginning of the sentence, quelquefois, sometimes. But the French sentence says, je joue bien au tennis. So I play well tennis. But in English, we wouldn't say it that way. We would say, I play tennis well. It goes at the end of the sentence, after the thing that you're playing, where in French, it's going right after the verb, right after the action. Okay, so it's good to keep that in mind. People who are French speakers who learn English often have trouble with this word order. So it's the same for us English speakers, but in reverse. Okay, and then finally the last example we see here is with ne and jamais. And this one, it's basically the same as what we would see with ne and pas for all the other verbs we've learned. So, je ne joue jamais au golf. Okay, so I never play golf. Or je ne joue pas au golf. I don't play golf. So that word order really doesn't change. That should be pretty familiar to you from learning ne and pas for other verbs. Okay, so that's a little bit about le pronom on et les adverbes, and you'll see some other videos coming for the other concepts in chapitre 2 next week. So I hope you all have a great weekend, and I look forward to making the next video. Bon weekend!